Welcome to the Gray Area Podcast presented by Aura. My name is Kevin Gray. Thanks for listening today. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure and download and subscribe to the Gray Area Podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can also follow me all over social media at Kevin Gray Sports and subscribe to the channel and like and comment on the video if you're watching it on my YouTube channel. It is Friday, which means it's Reg Fridays here on the Gray Area Podcast, joining me as he does every single Friday from 105.3 The Fan. Host of the Get Right, my man Reginald Adetula joining me here on the Gray Area. Reg, what's going on?
Not much, my man. Not much. Just we got even more games going. My bad. Just
see, this is what you get for trying to think that there was only one NCAA tournament game happening at 11:15. As we're recording this, that you thought there was only one game on.
Yeah, I'm trying to see how I'm gonna figure this one out.
Oh wow! Yeah, you got the whole because you got your tablet in front of you because we heard that. Shout out to that. And then you got the TV set up in front of you as well. Do you need to step away to go turn on your TV? You look real anxious.
I mean, look,
you look real anxious to get up and go turn on the TVs.
You have my undivided attention, Kevin.
No, that's not true at all. I can see it on your face. You can't even hide good. And I hate that people are just going to be able to listen to this only because you can't even hide your face good on the fact that you have completely divided attention, which is fine. Do you need to get up and go turn on the TV so you can feel better about yourself? Is that what you need to do?
I mean, I want to. However, I feel like that's probably not the responsible thing to do here. I have committed to doing this here podcast, but there is some women's hoop on, and I enjoy it.
Go turn on the TV. This would be great for the podcast. You go turn on the TV. I'll vamp for a second as you look at you. You can't even hide. Exactly. Got to go turn hoop on. See, this is what you get on the Gray Area Podcast. Now, if you're listening to this, I feel bad for you because you can't see Reg having got up to go turn on the TV, to go turn on NCAA Tournament hoop for the women's tournament and for the men's tournament. But if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you are having a ball and laughing your ass off because Reg couldn't hold himself together long enough to not have to go turn on the TV. And now you made that quick. That's good. You feel better now? You look like you feel better.
You said what?
You look like you feel better.
Just a little bit. I mean, you can kind of see it if you're watching just out of the corner there.
Which a nice, good setup there. Shout out to ABC in the background. I don't know if we got to pay for that, but whatever. It happened. But yeah, that is the joy of the NCAA tournament for those who still find joy in that, because these days I don't necessarily do recreational anger. So I quit doing brackets and all that other stuff a long time ago because
you won't be angry if you're good at it.
Well, here's the thing. When you think you're good at it and then these stupid 12 and 11 seeds get out here and ruin your stuff, or in the case of Oakland, a 14 seed taking out a 3 seed in Kentucky, and you see this happen over and over again, that's when the recreational anger kicks in. And I'm like, you know what? I'm trying to turn over a new leaf as I get older. I'm not necessarily trying to do that anymore. So I'll try to enjoy some of the tournament just by just watching it without having the stress of, oh, did I go, 21-1 today in my bracket or whatever it is, 16-1 in my bracket today. I could just enjoy the tournament for what it is and let it be that. And y'all can have your brackets busted and all this other stuff. Good. Y'all have fun with that.
Yeah, I think for me, I think my personal get down is, first of all, I think you know this about me. I like being right.
Yep.
It moves me. And so.
See, but here's the thing about being right, especially in this business. Nobody remembers.
Right. And
they all remember the stuff when you're wrong and they throw that back in your face. But when you're right, nobody comes back and says, hey, Kev, hey, Reg, you was 100% right about what you said about this, that, and the third. They don't remember that stuff.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like it does something for me personally.
Yes.
I feel it within my corporeal form, that rightness that happens. And so put the bracket together. And of course, I enjoy it when I hit. And then at the same time, on the other side, I recognize that we are trying to predict the actions of 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And so when I'm wrong, I'm like, what was I supposed to do? Right. And so it ends up being fun for me. And honestly, it's just an opportunity to have a little bit of engagement, just a little bit more investment in the games. It's like, I know that you said, you're here for, you might, take in a game here or there and enjoy it that way. It gives me a little bit of a reason to take in the game, gives me maybe a little bit of a, some understanding ahead of time, a little bit of research in a way on some of these teams to where I'm like, okay, I am a little bit more familiar with this team because I looked at what was happening with them before this started, as opposed to just turning on this TV and being like, well, who is Northwestern? What's happening with them this year, right? And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to pretend like I know what's happening completely, but at least I knew that they were going to be there. And so it gives me a little opportunity, a jumping off point, if you will, to be able to enjoy the basketball. Because I think one thing about me and you that we know about each other, we are real hoop heads.
Yes.
So yeah, I have an opportunity to watch some hoop. I will always appreciate that.
It's funny because when we get to this part of the year, and this really used to be one of my favorite times of the year, like stopping down on the NCAA tournament, especially the first weekend, because I was one of them dudes when I had the unfortunate pleasure of working a 9 to 5. I would be the guy with his tablet or with his computer, watching these tournament games, being super unproductive, because I've heard in years past that this is the most unproductive week in the year because folks are watching NCAA tournament games. I was definitely a contributor to that because I just love the idea of being able to watch hoop all day long. And especially when I knew who these cats were, because that's another thing that we'll get into, is the idea that I don't know who any of these dudes are anymore. But I used to be able to, when I grew up in the era of watching, the Kansases and the North Carolinas and the Dukes and, all these guys that you grew up watching for 2, 3, and 4 years. You have grown up watching and hating J.J. Redick. Couldn't stand Juan Dixon when he was at Maryland because I was a KU fan at the time and watching Maryland piece up, Kansas with Chris Wilcox and them boys tearing them up in the NCAA tournament, and then watching Carmelo Anthony tear him up in 03. Again, big Kansas fan at the time. Watching Carmelo tear up KU.
Why do they keep doing that to y'all, to be honest? Why do they do that all the time to y'all?
KU basketball during the regular season was something to behold. Them years when you go back to the Paul Pierce years, then you start getting into, the years with, Aaron Miles and, all these cats that you can think of, all these spectacular KU players. I missed a whole bunch, but you get the idea. And then watching these cats take on the likes of, as I mentioned, with Maryland, when they had Juan Dixon and Chris Wilcox and them boys, Carmelo Anthony, people need to go back to 2003, okay? And go watch Dwayne Wade and Carmelo Anthony when they were at Marquette and when they were at Syracuse. Marquette was so cold with Dwayne Wade. My man put up a triple-double on Kentucky, and it looked like light work in that NCAA tournament. And then Carmelo, who was the most outstanding player in the tournament, he went out there and put on a hell of a show against KU in the national title game and got Jim Boeheim the only national championship that he could ever speak of. Like, those are the days that I remember that got me charged up about the tournament, because there were so many stars that you grew up with watching that by the time you got to the second and third, 4 years of those guys, you knew who they were and you wanted to see if they would win or lose. It doesn't feel that way anymore in the tournament.
No, I think the NCAA tournament has gotten to where, there's still ways to enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, you're right. There's not going to be that continuity where there's excitement built based off of the actual basketball of it year to year. We've gotten to the place where the NCAA tournament kind of will function a little bit like the Olympics in some ways, where you tune in because of the event itself, and we will learn the stories of what's happening based on how good these broadcasters are, right? Assuming that you're somebody who's going to be in a place and available to be able to listen to the broadcasters as they are telling you. But like you then have to like find the story of what's happening as you go, figure out who the characters are as you go, right? So a lot of people might have tuned in NC State playing against Texas Tech last night and was like, hey, wait, does Zebo have a kid? No, just a dude that's built like Zebo out here hooping like Zebo for NC State, right? Like that's just the way that it's going to have to be. And you know what? I think that while that is very much different than the NCAA tournament that you have had and the college basketball that you've had before, and I think you could even argue that it's like lesser in ways, I think there's still some value in there. And I think because like the way that I described that, does that not sound like, walking around a downtown area and finding this quaint little mom and pop shop that you had no idea about, and you sit down, you're like, hey man, this is kind of nice. This is a thing that I discovered, right? In the same way, you can discover what's my man's name, Golke, who hits 10 3-pointers in a game.
Jack Golke. Right,
to knock off Kentucky, and literally takes no 2-pointers. And all of a sudden, we're just like, who is this cat? What's happening with him, right? Like, they're a little, I think it ends up being a gold mine for novelty, as opposed to like the big sporting event in the ways that we typically have used to have it being. So it just kind of shifts in that way. And so I know for some people that's not really what they're here for, and that's fine. I think that there's still ways to enjoy it personally.
Yeah, and I think part of my gripe with the NCAA is the way that, some folks decide to consume this and opine on it, because one thing that has bothered me most as the years have gone on with the tournament, because look, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen of all ages, college basketball as a form these days, it's not a good product. And I don't know who that offends. If it offends you, I don't give a damn. College basketball, for the most part, in my mind, isn't necessarily great from an aesthetic standpoint. And what we do when we get to the NCAA tournament is we conflate drama and, amazing moments for product being good on the floor. What Virginia did the other night in the NCAA tournament was some of the most horrendous basketball that you will ever see. And for people who watch them, hopefully you don't watch them, and other teams that necessarily play in the tournament, you'll see high drama, but the quality of play at times isn't necessarily good when it comes to college basketball, and particularly when we get some of these teams in here that may not necessarily be good, but still found a way to win their conference tournament that are in the NCAA tournament now.
Yeah, but one thing that I've realized, because I agree with you. You know this about me, is like the idea of a close game versus a good game is something that people have some level of difficulty parsing. But one thing I realize is I think that there's a lot more people that come to sports in general, but particularly to basketball. And I'm not just talking about at the college level, basketball in general. They come to this for drama, right? Like sports, I know you've probably heard this before, is like sports operates as like the reality TV for men, right? Like men who are not allow themselves to come to the places of reality TV in the ways that I think, I guess stereotypically women will do, right? They will get to the same place. We're talking about the rumors, which is just our male gossip. We're talking about, like we're doing that. And in that same way, like the drama that you get from sports, it seems like more people are tapped into the drama of basketball than they are to like the hoop of it, which again, if it serves the purpose that it needs to for you, that's cool. But that is one thing that I've come to realize more and more is like, I think there are fewer people than you'd probably anticipate that are like, I am here for the basketball of this, the actual basketball of it. Then I'm here for the drama of it. I'm here for the storylines. And some of that is like basketball, and probably at the NBA level in particular, they've courted that, right? Like they have tried to make the stories and when I say that, I don't mean like recently. The reason why basketball is a national sport and a big one, as opposed to what it was prior in the 70s or whatever, is because of what? Bird Magic.
Yeah.
Right? That they brought people to this with drama, right? Like now you keep them with, oh my goodness, amazing basketball is happening, incredible feats of athleticism. But people were here for the drama, and that's basketball has always had that undercurrent within it. And so, yeah, I feel like more and more I'm realizing that, hey, man, folks are here for the drama first and foremost. And then this other stuff is cool. And maybe the basketball comes in second. Maybe it's tertiary or whatever. And so I've tried to be a little bit less judgmental on that, where it's like, yo, if you just hear on the NCAA for the tournament for the drama, I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of the whole system is set up to be dramatic, right? Again, if you are looking for a champion, single elimination tournament, not really the best way to go and go about finding who is the best team, right?
Nope.
It's a great way to find a team who is playing well in this moment and who can stack some games together. That's not really the best like championship generator, right? It's if you really want to find the best teams, like making sure that you have the wide swath of college basketball in there and you platform various teams that are like, all right, they have no shot. But the problem, the idea is not to have shot. The idea is to have Cinderellas and have all these dramatic elements to it. That's what this is about. And so I find myself trying to be a little bit less high and mighty and a little bit less judgmental on it, because the drama is kind of, it's kind of the feature. It's kind of the thing.
Yeah, and that's part of what made this tournament, and what for a lot of folks still makes this tournament great, is the storytelling that does come with the NCAA tournament, because we get introduced to players, teams, and coaches who you may not have known about throughout the course of a college basketball season, but as the success of their teams and those players go on throughout the course of the tourney, now you get a window into some of these other players and coaches outside of the traditional blue bloods of your North Carolinas, your Dukes, your Kansases, UConn now to a degree with all the national championships that they won, that there's a romanticism about the tournament that is appealing for a lot of folks when we get to this particular weekend. My contention has been that's cool and all the first week of the tournament. But here's what, at least for me, has been borne out over the last now several years is that while it's cute and cool to watch these Cinderella teams or some dude who's 100 years old knock down 10 threes and take Kentucky out of the tournament, by the time we get to the Elite Eight, the Final Four, national championship game, particularly for me, guess who I'm trying to watch? North Carolina, Kansas, Duke, UConn, UCLA when they were good, Arizona. Like, give me the teams that have the name recognition because I want to see those teams play. And I think, and I have to go back and check, but when Kansas and North Carolina played in the national title game a couple of years ago or whatever it was the most watched NCAA championship game ever. Now, again, there's a little bit of inflation with that, with, you know, streaming and cable and all this other stuff. But the point is, those two teams are the draw. And last year, like, we're watching Northwestern Florida Atlantic as we're, you know, recording this. I had forgotten that Florida Atlantic even made it to the Final Four last year, let alone that they had actually, you know, had a tournament worthy of them being watched. Like, that to me is where some of my contention is when it comes to the tournament. That y'all love the Cinderella when it comes to the first weekend, but by the time we get to the nitty gritty of this, yeah, I want to see these the best of the best play, and maybe the tournament doesn't afford that because of how it's structured to determine a champion.
Yeah, but I think also one of the things that's happened is, in effect, everybody's Cinderellas now, right? Like, and obviously not in every single way, but in the way of, and what you're talking about here, where you're like, hey, I want to see the teams that I know as we go deeper. Which of these teams do you know, right? Like, I think we have found it, and I'm going to speak anecdotally from my personal perspective. My general get down on college basketball, being like a sports generalist, somebody that keeps up with all this different stuff. So you got to have like a game plan on how you're going to get in and when you're going to get in and how you divide your energy, how you use your bandwidth. My game plan in past had been, all right, once you get Duke UNC, right? Because everybody's watching enough ESPN. ESPN has the rights to the ACC, and to the ACC rather, and they're going to let you know when this important game comes up, right? And so when Duke UNC is coming up, everybody knows, all right, this is going to be a big game to watch. You jump in there, that ends up being your foray in. Now it's college basketball season. When was the last time Duke UNC one had that level of push on ESPN? But then outside of, like, I think recently we've gotten back to a place where it's been somewhat interesting, but there was a nice like 4-year stretch there where Duke UNC was not something to watch because one or the other or both was not all that good, right? And I've realized that, oh wow, yeah, I'm not keeping up with the blue bloods nearly as much as I had previously. And so they all effectively are Cinderellas. I'm learning about dudes on Kentucky in the same way that I'm learning about dudes on, I guess you mentioned Florida Atlantic, so I'll say that and I'll use that. But like, hey, we learn about all of them in that way. So in effect, right, whoever make the Final Four, they are just going to be those teams. And so I think that you are still right when you talk about, like, viewership is going to go up because there's a lot of people, and in college basketball or college sports in general, right? A lot, like, hey, there's people that know these names of these dudes on the names on the back of the jerseys, but a lot of times people are coming for the names on the front, right? Like, there's a lot of people that are just rooting for the association with their school. It's some of the ways in which college sports can be really nasty, right? Is that people will find a way to be good to people, to human beings, because they are wearing their jersey, that ultimately you look at any other place in their life that they would treat those people terribly, right? And we don't have to go too far down those paths, but I think you understand exactly what I'm talking about. You know that I'm speaking truth here. But yeah, like, a lot of people will show up for UNC just because it's UNC. But I think that even that, like, the idea that you know exactly who any of these dudes are on any of these teams, I think is faded. And so in effect, hey man, they might as well all be Cinderellas. Like, we are, whenever you decide to tune in, you're going to be learning about these cats fresh, just like if it was just some random team, some George Mason, which is another reference. I realize all of our like upset references and all our Cinderella references are like a decade old now, if not more. But yes, they all in effect to me seem to be Cinderellas at this point.
I mean, think about it. Like, I was looking at some of the numbers here. The the UNC Duke national semifinal, where of course Coach Krzyzewski lost his final, game to North Carolina, which is still hilarious. Nearly 18 million people watched that game.
And you want to know why? You mentioned it, right? The star of that game was Coach Krzyzewski, was Coach K.
Yes. Yes.
That's another thing. Like, do we have faces of the game? Because I heard there was somebody at some point pontificating that UConn needs to go and win a championship, and then Dan Hurley would become the new face of basketball. And I was like, wait, hold on. I don't know I don't know that people know Dan Hurley like that for that to be the face of basketball. Like, I don't know who.
And he done won a national championship now.
And probably the dude who is best suited to be the face of basketball just lost in the first round again.
That's right. That's right. Like, that's the thing about college basketball. While yes, in the changing landscape of today's college basketball, while the players that you mentioned from yesteryear, whether it be the Michael Jordans of the world, the Isaiah Thomases, and then obviously as you get more into the modern era, with the Vince Carters and the Jerry Stackhouses and all these players, of Paul Pierce, any star you want to name from some of these bigger schools, like they had the star, but you also had the star coaches, whether it was Mike Krzyzewski, the late Dean Smith, obviously, Bob Knight, Jim Boeheim, like any of those massive names that you can think of. The coaches were the big star, just much like how college football is. The biggest stars of the sport, Nick Saban, but he's retired now. Obviously, Deion Sanders, what he's doing, with Colorado. The biggest names of the sport are college coaches. And in a lot of ways, college basketball was the same way. Now you look around, I don't know who mostly, like, the biggest name of the game right now for me probably is Bill Self at Kansas, the most recognizable coach in college basketball based off of, if we're looking at traditional power and the way that these teams, because, John Shire, good coach at Duke, cool. Hubert Davis, good coach, North Carolina, all right, cool. But doesn't have the star power of a Bill Self. But Bill Self's been in the game for long time. Bill Self's been in the game.
Yeah. I was about to say, are we about to play name a coach? Because we can keep going with that. But yeah, and then,
I can't hardly name any of them these days. Like you mentioned, Hurley with UConn. It's just like, oh, okay, that's cool. Who else you got?
I guess you can go with Scott Drew at Baylor, building certain.
And he's won a national championship, but you couldn't pick him out of a lineup if you wanted to.
I think majority, that's fair. Bruce Pearl at Auburn, and some of this is like you have some names that have moved around a little bit. And so, but Izzo's still there, Michigan
Tom
State.
Izzo, okay, Tom Izzo and Bill Self would probably be the two most recognizable names right now in college basketball as far as coaches are concerned.
Yeah, I'm trying to, because again, I think there's a lot of times that we find ourselves in a place where we're real sickos in sports. Because I'm like, all right, Mark Few at Gonzaga, and I'm like, how many people got you
Mark
on
Few could walk up to somebody and punch them in the face and tell them, I'm Mark Few, coach of one of the most successful programs over the last 25 years, and they'll say, who the hell are you again? What do you do? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, so it feels like we're losing kind of a certain level of personalities at the coaching level. Yeah, look, these things, college sports just continue to be changing. They're shifting. That's a landscape that has been apparent in a big way. And even the tournament feels it a little bit. But the tournament is also an institution. And you know what will keep this thing going more than anything? Like, I understand, like, there's the American desire to have this institution continue, but the American desire to gamble money is going to keep this thing going, baby. The American desire to gamble is what will keep the NCAA tournament relevant, whether these coaches or these players or anything. If we got these numbers and these trends and these odds and these over-unders, right? Tournament gonna keep going.
Oh boy. Let's take a quick break here on the Gray Area Podcast. Let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on the Gray Area Podcast. Appreciate you hanging out with us through that quick break there, and appreciate today's sponsor of our podcast and our video in Aura. We were talking about the NCAA tournament, and you started to dive into the gambling aspect of this, because obviously that's a huge thing in today's sports. And speaking of gambling, I never thought I would find myself talking about one of the biggest stars in all of sports and his interpreter allegedly maybe in a huge gambling scandal. And of course, I'm referring to Shohei Ohtani and his now fired interpreter. And Reg, I don't know where to go with this, because the amount of branches, the way that this is going, and the story, the way that it's turned so far. And for folks who don't know, Shohei Ohtani, his interpreter, has been fired because my man was out here apparently gambling to the tune of losses of what, $4.5 million worth.
That is correct.
And there's allegedly the idea that this interpreter stole from Shohei Ohtani, but the interpreter also said that, oh, Shohei covered my gambling losses, to which Shohei and his group are actually like, no, you stole from us, actually. Like, it's just a weird story that has engulfed Major League Baseball at a time where its biggest star has gone to one of its biggest markets and is really the face of the game. And yeah, it's just a really weird story that's taking place right now in Major League Baseball.
Mind you, a star who is seemed downright like cute and cuddly, like you know, like any level of scandal has been far away from Shohei. Like, Shohei has not just been milk toast in like being largely inoffensive, right? Because I'm not talking about Mike Trout. He has basically been a koala bear playing baseball at an incredibly high level. Like, he has been that level of inoffensive and clean, and now he is dropped in the middle of a gambling scandal that is wild, and that also keeps shifting, right? Because you mentioned the idea that apparently his interpreter, supposedly, who, mind you, makes something like $300,000 a year, supposedly got into a $4.5 million gambling debt with an like an illegal bookmaker, right? And I want to go down so many different paths. Let me
because there's so many. There's so many.
Apparently, the illegal bookmaker or whatever, $4.5 million debt. Supposedly, as you mentioned, the interpreter had let Shohei know, and supposedly, like, the story at one point was that Shohei had offered to pay it off. And I imagine that him and his team realized, oh, wow, that's illegal. And then they were like, hey, so, yeah, no, actually, that man stole from us. Which, how did he do that? He got numbers to the accounts, right? He got numbers to the accounts. He managed to get you for $4.5 million before y'all realized that he had taken all this. And so that didn't check out. But also, I would raise my hand very early on into learning this when they said that man had $4.5 million debt with an illegal bookie. And I was like, how did you get to $4.5 million without losing some kneecaps or some toes or some fingers
or worse,
ears, or your nose, right? Like, your whole body in one piece. And you got to $4.5 million in debt with an illegal bookie. Word.
Because I would have had questions at like 50 grand. Like, hey, what's going on here, my guy? What's going on here? Let alone 4.5 million. It's interesting that you brought up, the idea that my man had access potentially to Shohei's money, because there's an interesting piece.
I'm not sure that he actually did. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. There's an interesting piece in the Los Angeles Times that I encourage folks, if you're able to read it, to do so, because it details how apparently Shohei Ohtani has existed in this cocoon or this bubble of naivete, to where basically my man has had people doing things for him since who knows how long, because he doesn't run his own finances. Like, people have been basically doing things for him. He's been coddled in such a way where his job, and I guess you have to be able to focus solely on the game if you're going to be a pitcher and a hitter and basically be the modern day Babe Ruth. But basically my point is, the article details that Shohei has been treated with kid gloves, and people have done everything for him, that there's a certain level of maybe unknown to him that people don't necessarily understand, that, yeah, he doesn't really do much of anything. Like, he plays baseball and that's about it, and has let other people kind of run his life for him. And this shouldn't be apparently shocking to anybody who has been around him or understands, I guess, the orbit that Shohei Ohtani, runs around in, because he doesn't really do much of anything for himself.
Which would kind of make sense on that. Hey, nah, y'all can pay me whenever y'all get to it. Like, that definitely sounds like somebody who does not understand the value of money. He's like, yeah, how much money? Yeah, whenever you get to it, it's cool. We can defer that money, because there's a lot of people that was like, are you sure? Like, I would like that right now.
Like, all of it right now.
Like, yeah, it's fine. I got, like, there's some money in there somewhere. I'll get to it. Whenever you give me the money, it's cool. Like, I should, that tracks in that regard.
Yes.
Also, but that does, like, there's a lot of athletes who are not quite to that level, the level that we're describing, but like, there is something to be to understand, where it's like, you get to a certain level and you need a little bit of delegation. You can't spread your, like, imagine you listening to this right now, the job that you got, the bills you got, the responsibilities you have. Think of how stressed you are managing it all.
Yes.
Right? You get to that level where, I understand, you got more money. You got a lot of responsibilities. You expect to be literally one of the best at your job in the world, all those types of things. I personally imagine I would like to spread some of these things out. I would like to not have to worry about my taxes, right? I would like to have, and so I think there's a lot of athletes that get into this place where they have to trust people, and it's not easy to know who not to trust until you get to the point when you can't trust them, right? And so I think this happens a lot, right? Sometimes we can be a little judgmental on the, well, how could you get got? Why aren't you watching? Why didn't you vet them? A lot easier said than done, dog. A lot easier said than done, especially with these dudes that are, a lot of times they have had to almost singularly devote themselves to a sport. Like, this worldliness that maybe you believe that you have, not a lot of them have the ability to do that, because they have been trying so hard and using all their bandwidth to be at the top of their game. And so they got to trust this accountant and believe that this accountant knows more math than they do. And I imagine that they do know more math than they do. The problem is, what happens when someone gets greedy? Or if they happen to have gotten a whole bunch of illegal debt with a bookmaker, and your account sitting right there with a whole bunch of zeros and commas, right? Like,
that potentially had access to it.
I still find that to be incredible. I still, like, it's a level of unbelievable, to the point where I was like, is Shohei out here betting?
And that's that. And again, and right? I thought Chris Rose made an excellent point. He covers Major League Baseball for MLB Network, and made an excellent point. The idea that, hey, number one, your commissioner need to get out here and say something. Like, hey, whatever, quick statement that he made, whatever. No, he needs to get out here and say something, because those are the leaps that people are making now when it comes to this story, is that it's so wildly unbelievable. Is this a cover for Shohei Ohtani possibly gambling out here and doing, like, those are the leaps that people are making right now.
Right, because if you make $300,000, I got a lot of questions as to how you racked up $4.5 million of debt. If you set to make $700 million, I could see how $4.5 million of debt might come to be. I still got questions.
Yeah,
I can see how maybe you get to that place, and maybe look. And I want to fully acknowledge I have fully veered off into conspiracy land at this point. I want to put the disclaimer. I know that,
but that's where a lot of people are. That's where a lot of people have gone with this because of the nature of the story.
But they doing that unironically. Like, I'm in this place where I understand where I am. I'm trying to do it at maximum responsible. I wish we had production to put it on the banner up here. Irresponsible speculation happening right now. But hey man, like, I could kind of see it where ain't gambling illegal in Japan? Like maybe he got to the great land of America, was like, wait, what is this newfangled thing? Freedom. And he just dove in to a point where he got
to illegal in California. If I remember correctly, isn't it illegal out there?
I mean, he ain't always in California though.
But I mean,
it's just a wild thing. Like the number itself is doing so much work here. $4.5 million.
Yeah, it's a wild number.
With one bookie. Like it's not a whole bunch of bookies. Just one bookie. I got questions for that bookie.
Why? What questions would you have for them?
Why did you wait this long? Like you ain't collect up earlier?
Clearly he was allowing the guy to, dig himself deeper into a hole. Like, why not, man? Just keep going. You hear now?
Money. Like the idea of the bookie is not just to generate debt, it's to collect up, dog. You know what I mean? Like they make money by collecting up, Kevin. Like that's where the money is made. I'm not just here to give you odds and push numbers on this spreadsheet. I imagine that bookie needs to collect up at some point.
Oh, well,
you let them get to $4.5 million?
Hey, man, come get it. Come get it at some point. And by the way, yes, it is illegal to do sports gambling in the state of California. So that's another element to this. Like Shohei has spent obviously the entirety of his career in the state of California with the Angels and now, of course, with the Dodgers. So there's another element to that. It's funny because as you were describing some of this, what it made me think of in the most wild way? There needs to be a case study done on LeBron James when his career is over with, and how his group with Maverick Carter and all these boys and how he was able to form. Obviously, they were friends in high school and grew up together. But the fact that that group has turned themselves into the media conglomerate that they are with their whole entertainment business, LeBron and what he's done, obviously, in his NBA career, there needs to be a study done on how that has been able to stay together the way that it has, because he has surrounded himself with all kinds of fantastic people that have managed him to becoming, outside of Jordan over the last 30 years and Tiger Woods, I would say as well, the most recognizable American athlete that we have seen over the past now 3 decades, I would imagine.
That part. All right, cool. The idea that ain't nobody that we know of stole from him, ain't nobody that we know of stepped out of line, right? I understand that's your partners, right? Like in theory, it's because he did it with his partners from day one. I have seen day ones look up and see all that money and been like, yeah, this money, these comments are worth the friendship. It's cool. Like I've seen people, it's happened. It has happened.
Yes.
And I don't know if Braun sat all the boys down at some point and let them know. I don't know if he hit him with one of these, like hit him in that Nelson and have Nelson like, hey,
don't you ever.
I don't know if he was like, look, if he had to sit them down and just talk reasonably, like, look, you are gonna get yours, but don't let me ever find. Like, I don't know if LeBron got some hitter somewhere that pulled up on his homeboys when they were sleeping in their house. Like,
hey, y'all see this dude right here? Y'all see this dude over here?
I want you to know, Bron love you, but he will take you out. You mess with his money. I don't know what it is, but somehow, not only did he get a whole bunch of dudes that weren't in those industries, got them into industries, and they were successful. Didn't none of them go crazy and backstab or cross another way? Because this is the thing. Is again, I bring this back around to Shohei has been the epitome of inoffensive as a baseball player, right? To the point of being like somewhat unrecognizable at times, although he is it's the Japanese guy, right? So it makes it a little bit easier. But this is scandal with him. And we again go back to LeBron James, who, I mean, look, there's some things that you can point to as some level of scandal, but all things considered, largely scandal free. And that just continues to be more and more amazing.
The most scandalous thing LeBron's ever been involved in was the fact that he gave millions of dollars to a charity because he decided to go do a TV special on where he was going in free agency. That's the level of scandal that we're talking about with LeBron James.
For the most part.
Which is not a scandal at all. Y'all was just butthurt at the idea that he decided to get on television to tell us that he was taking his talents to South Beach. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of kids back there, including, if I remember correctly, Donovan Mitchell, who was able to be the beneficiary of LeBron's generosity because he gave a bunch of money to the Boys and Girls Club.
Pretty much. For the most part, yeah. He's had some missteps and getting into the geopolitical space, right? He's had some missteps there.
Yes.
I don't think that I personally would not rise that to the level of scandal.
Correct.
And so, ultimately, largely done this pretty well, LeBron. What might be the most scandalous is that he be out here being corny all the damn time. Other than that, shout out to that man.
Him and Derek Jeter. The fact that Derek Jeter could play an entire 20-plus year career in the city of New York, win 5 championships, and not a scandal attached to his name. The most quote-unquote scandalous thing you could say about Derek Jeter was the roster of women that he dated throughout his time in New York.
And that he be letting them leave with gift baskets. Like, that's just hospitality. That's all that is. Shout out to that guy. His scandal is that he was real. He had real hospitality when he was kicking people out. That's great. I love that. He was like, here's your gift basket. Please exit the premises.
Thank you for your time and your relationship. You can exit stage left now. And he continued to be the king of New York. Yeah, Derek Jeter. He did it right. He definitely did it right. Before we get out of here today, because this show has gone by extremely fast, because, you know, we've had a ball here on the gray area. As we've talked a little bit earlier, we talked a little NCAA hoops. We got to talk about the Mavericks a little bit, because I look up Reg. Mavericks are 15-6 in their last 21 games. And here's the wildest part about it. They're doing the thing that we thought that if they did it, that would allow them to win games, because over the last 21 games, they're number 3 in offensive rating. They're number 11 in defensive rating. And right now, over the last 21, got a net rating of plus 6.4, which is 4th in the league. And now they're a season high 12 games above 500 after getting a win over Utah. They're getting ready to go on a 5-game road trip. But the Mavericks are doing the thing that's got people paying attention to them. Like, should we now look? It was funny, just a couple of weeks ago, we was ready to get Jason Kidd up out the paint. They lost 5 of 6. They looked like they wasn't going nowhere fast. And now all of a sudden they've won 7 of 8 in a Luka Doncic hamstring away for probably being on an 8-game run right now. And people look at the Mavericks like, oh, well, maybe we do need to pay attention to Luka and Kyrie and what's going on in Dallas, because they're playing so well right now.
Dangerous team, right? The idea, if you could add a level of defense to this team, they are dangerous, right? And it's kind of crazy because the offense is 2 dudes for the most part. Well, the offense is
you got it right. You got it right.
It's 4 dudes. It's Kyrie, Luka, and them centers, right? Like in the size that they bring. And then they basically everything else is like situated to try and give you some defense. Don't look at Tim Hardaway Jr. right now. Don't do that. I don't want you to look over there. Don't look over there. But like, I mean, it's seeming to work on a certain level, like at least on the regular season level of this, which you cannot scoff at, because they did not have that all the way together. Now this is a place where it seems like you're finding a level of consistency there. The question is, how sustainable is that on the playoff level? And I don't mean to like move the goalposts on this, because again, I do want to give them their credit for seeming to find a place where this is more tenable, especially in the way that Jason Kidd and his staff likes this, where they are playing defense, they are locked in, and those things. Now you got to do it in that place, because that's where you were trying to go. That's the end goal, is getting into the playoffs and being consistently a threat in that way. And it feels like they absolutely can win a series. And it's like, now how much can you threaten for contending? And so it's good to see. It really is good to see. They have taken that roster, and for a very long time, the roster had been untenable.
Yeah.
And now it is something that you can work with in a real way. And so a lot of props are due in a lot of different places, including with these dudes on the court, because they have seemed locked in. They have bought in. They are playing consistent. And that's why you're seeing the level of defense that you are against good teams, holding a lot of teams under 110 when it comes to points in a game, and creating turnovers. Like they are buying in a way that I think, honestly, I didn't see them being capable of doing. So it really is a lot of congratulations due to those dudes. And maybe Kyrie, especially, like, as he seems like he's leader dude, right? I could talk about the difficult shot making. I want to talk about leader dude Kyrie.
Yeah.
Because people talk crazy about Kyrie, and obviously he's earned some of that.
Some of it's been warranted. Some
of it has been warranted, but like, I looked at this roster and I was like, who's leader dude? And apparently the answer is Kyrie Irving in some ways. Like, I also can't forget Dwight Powell. Dwight Powell is like some of that in the locker room.
Markieff Morris too, by the way. Yeah.
But yeah, like I mean, after which game was it that they embarrassed themselves out there when Markieff and Kyrie Irving were the dudes who had them all together having a team meeting, like, yo, gotta change, right? Like things got to come together. And so Kyrie Irving, leader guy.
How about that?
Welcome to 2024, I guess, right? Like this, right? A Kyrie Irving leader guy. That's what I got for you.
Yeah, as we're recording this, Kyrie turns 32 on Saturday, so he's at a point where
wow, Kyrie Irving is a month older than me. That's crazy.
And he's been in the league for 13 years. Like that. Wow. Think about that. Kyrie's been in the league for 13 years and is just now turning 32 years old. Like it's just wild to think about where he is in terms of his career and how long he's been in the league and what we've seen him grow up and go through to get to this point in his career. And you could tell he's extremely comfortable here in Dallas. Like he said it, at the post game, on Thursday night, like there's a level of comfort for him having been embraced by, the city, by the organization, the way that they've taken care of him as he has continued to play extremely well through the observance of Ramadan. Like he has been spectacular. And yeah, he's turned into veteran leader guy. And the 21 game profile of this team has been wild. Like they won 7 straight, then they lost 5 of 6. Now they've won 7 of 8. Now they're getting ready to go on a 5-game road trip where they really kind of control their own destiny because, right now they're 6th in the West. And if they are able to somehow handle business against Sacramento, where they play 2 games on the road against them, next week, it's going to be hard to get them out of the 6th seed. And you and I talked about it plenty before the season started that based on the way that this roster was composed, yeah, this was going to be a play-in team and may not necessarily, win a first-round series. Now they feel like a team. And again, something that has been more of a national conversation now as they've gotten more notoriety. You don't want to see the Mavericks in a first-round series. Like if this level of Maverick team is showing up in a first-round playoff series, you want no parts of it because Luke and Kyrie are going to offensively put you into a tailspin. And then defensively, they're doing the thing where, hey, they're actually defending teams at a high level. And if PJ Washington ever found the 3-point shot down the stretch.
Well, but that's one of the things, though, right? And
yes.
Here I am to be jerk.
They're not shooting the 3 well right now. They're not shooting the 3 well at all right now.
Well, there's that, but then there's also, like, how many of the guys on this roster do you trust in playoff circumstances as opposed to regular season circumstances? Because that's the thing about the playoffs.
2 of them.
Your stars are there. They're exceptional. They're the guys that are constants. It's the role guys who you're expecting to step up in moments and make things happen. And I think that's where I'm interested and intrigued to see how this goes, because now it feels like the most important role guys that you've situated are centers and dudes defensively inclined. And so I'm really interested to see how that ends up working out once you get to the playoffs. And are you going to have the PJ Washington game, right? Are you going to have the Josh
THJ
Green game or the THJ game? Like I think those are the things that now I am kind of thinking about or mulling over as you seem to have put yourself in a place to be able to go and avoid the play-in. And of course that's not over, but you're working your way very comfortably towards that. Now, that's the next level of this. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm already thinking about what is the next conversation that would happen when it comes to this roster. And those are the fun ones. But right now they've absolutely bettered their station over the course of this season. And a lot of praise due to Nico Harrison. Yes, Jason Kidd, and your major players on this roster, including Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to see how this team handles prosperity, because the last time this team was on a heater like this, when they won 7 straight, they turned around and lost 5 of 6. And we was wondering if the bottom had fallen out of the thing. And now they turned it around to win 7 of 8. So how do they handle prosperity now for the rest of the season?
What do you think has made them, because they've been a streaky team all season. It's particularly since the turn of the calendar, since 2024 turn.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been streak here, streak there. And of course, like look, we could probably find some level of streakiness necessarily if you break it up and break any team up in some ways. Like, well, there were 4-8 and 5. You know what I mean? Like, you could probably find some level of streakiness, but they've been really relatively streaky this season. What do you attribute that to? Because we were having a conversation about that earlier this week.
Oh boy, I think there's a couple of things. One, they have found ways to start winning games when shots aren't falling, because this team's MO has been, going into this year and previous time, that if shots aren't falling, especially from three, this team folds like a cheap lawn chair, and they start hanging their heads on the defensive end and they get run out of the gym. That's not happening anymore. Like, going into the game against, Utah on Thursday night, they were averaging only 11 made threes per contest, and they only made 10 against Utah on Thursday. Like, they're not shooting the ball well from three, but they're now dominating teams in the paint and on the glass, and they're playing with a new level of physicality that we haven't seen really ever in the Luka Doncic era. And while, yeah, they aren't necessarily a great shooting team right now, they're getting easy buckets. And when you're able to get more attempts based off your ability to offensive rebound with Gafford and Lively, you're going to still make up for some of those points, even for the shots that you don't miss, because you're getting more attempts at it, and they're getting a bunch of easy buckets. And the other thing is, too, they're turning teams over and getting out in transition. Like, they are finishing in the fast break, and their athleticism has been spectacular, since they acquired Gafford and Washington, which is something that prior to the season, Jason Kidd had wanted to do. They wanted to get younger. They wanted to get more athletic, and they have been able to do that with the additions of Lively, Gafford, Washington, Derrick Jones Jr. throughout the course of the year. Like, they've done those things, and now we're starting to see a larger enough sample size where that's starting to bear itself out in the way that they've wanted to have the style of play for them this year.
So what have been the downs in that? Because those are the things that would attribute to the ups. What have made those things then disappear in certain instances, right? Like, I think that's the interesting thing of the ups and downs of this, is like, those are absolutely there. What have created those dips, I think, is the interesting question, or why those things have happened. And it feels like, and sometimes it's just like losing focus.
Yeah, when they don't defend against good teams, they're horrendous. Like, this team is tied to how they are defensively. As much as they are an offensive team, this team goes as well as they defend or how they don't defend. And when they've been good, they've defended at a high level. When they haven't been good, they've been horrendous on the defensive end. And they've got to do that against the best teams, which I think is, to your point, the idea of what's the next conversation on this. Can they do it against high-level teams, especially as we get toward the end of the season and then into the playoffs, to give us an idea that this is actually real and not a mirage based on some of the teams that they've played to be able to beat during this 21-game stretch here?
Yeah, you said it.
So, that's I think that's been the biggest difference, because, I mean, look, they're doing the thing. They're playing above average defense, which didn't think it was capable of. And offensively, they're scoring a ton of points. So, it's going to be fun to watch this team. But yeah, the 2 games against Sacramento is going to be the 2 most interesting ones of this 5-game stretch, because Sacramento has basically run them out of the gym the first couple of times. Like, I don't know what it is about De'Aaron Fox when he sees the Mavericks on the other side, and he just goes berserk on them. And Domantas Sabonis has been a triple-double machine. I think he's got like 24, 25 triple-doubles this year. Like, he's been insanely good for them. But they're also
more.
Yeah, but they also a Jekyll and Hyde type of team, because as good as wins that they've had, throughout the year, they also just lost to Washington on the road to Kyle Kuzma and them boys. So they are very up and down and streaky of their own. But yeah, they're a talented offensive team, that can run you out of the gym in a hurry. So, but yeah, good for Luka and the Mavericks. Good on them.
Really and truly.
Look at us. I'm sure that's what they're saying. Look at us. Yeah, not us. Hey, but here we are. Reg, tell the folks that they can find you. What you got going on, man?
At Reg Adetula on Twitter, radio, Locked On Mavs sometimes. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you hanging out with me here on the gray area, as you do every single Friday. Look, Reg is distracted by hoops. He wants to watch hoops. I see it on his face. I see it. He wants to go watch hoop, because that's all he's going to do this weekend, is just sit down. Is that all you're going to do this weekend? Just sit down in front of TV and just watch hoop all weekend?
I mean, that and probably try and figure out something to do with my hair. But yeah, pretty much, I imagine. You should tap into this Northwestern Florida Atlanta game. They're at half, and it's 19-18. I think you'll love it.
See? Point being made right there. 19-18 at halftime.
I think you'd love this game.
Oh my gosh. Stop telling me college basketball is good to watch. It's not. It's just not. That's it for this episode of the Gray Area Podcast. Make sure you download and subscribe to the Gray Area wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And you can like and comment on this video on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. I'll be back on Monday to maybe or maybe not talk about the NCAA tournament or other stuff that may happen throughout the course of the weekend. Until then, I'll talk to you on Monday here on the Gray Area. Have a great weekend.